Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Founders Crate, sponsored by Gaper.io. Today we have Hilary Tran. Hilary Tran is a sourcing consultant with Harnham. Hilary, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, Mustafa.
So, you've been recently, almost a year now, you've transitioned from being a professional athlete to sourcing consultant. Before we get down to that, let's hear about what you've been doing before Harnham.
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to share it. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible. So before I was a sourcing consultant, and it's only been about a little bit less than a year. I was in the fitness industry for 7+ years as a nationally ranked Olympic lifter. I've traveled to compete in CrossFit and Olympic lifting. And I also coach remotely across the globe. I've also had a couple of businesses within fitness as a coach and as an athlete, as a manager in corporate gyms and in smaller boutique gyms, consulting here and there. And I had an opportunity to where there was a point where I could choose what I wanted to do. And I was kind of at this crossroad where I was thinking, what would I have done differently 5 years back? And tech was kind of one thing that was always very interesting to me. And especially in the fitness industry too, a lot of AI has been applied. And so I was just kind of like, I want to understand what this industry is like. And I'm definitely not a programmer or anything in terms of technical trade, but I've always been in face-to-face interactions. And so recruiting kind of came naturally. I've had a couple of clients that are in the industry and they said that this might be a good fit. And that's kind of how I landed in my role now. And it's been pretty interesting, actually. Coming from fitness, you don't sit. First of all, so adjusting to the corporate lifestyle was one thing I had to actually adjust to. And secondly, I think a lot of the routines that I had in the fitness industry translated over really well to the remote working environment now. Since a lot of it was, you had to do your own schedule as a trainer. You had to always be very self-disciplined, and understanding that kind of really helped translate over to like a corporate lifestyle, and even just these changes that came like very fast. Like in Split, it came over a weekend. I remember that when they announced shelter in place.
Yeah, true. So, building data science engineering teams for fast moving companies, what's it like, and especially it's easier to find one engineer or two engineers, but when it comes down to building teams overnight, like a team of 6, 10 or 15 within a week's time. So what are the challenges that you face in that and how do you overcome them?
The challenges in building the teams, right? It's a very good question because there's so many in recruiting. There's like a million different variables that can happen. Because, for example, I use fitness as an analogy a lot because that's kind of the world I came from. And so, for example, when it comes to a trainer to a client, matching them is typically it's only one-sided. Trainer's always probably going to say yes unless something is out of their scope. It's actually about the client, about what they want, right? And then when it comes to recruiting, in terms of data science team and the hiring managers, and then as a recruiter, both sides can say no, right? And so we're always managing those expectations and understanding what the data scientist, for example, wants to work on, and understand what the hiring manager actually needs to execute a vision. And trying to matchmake that has always been the challenge, I want to say. And so on our end, it's always just being able to manage expectations. And in a climate that's very uncertain, at least in the pandemic, it's a little bit difficult because there is so much uncertainties and you're trying to get everyone at a still point that they can all agree on what's going to happen. And it's hard. It's really hard. So I think in terms of being able to manage expectations in an uncertain time has been the biggest difficulty. And I mean, that was already a challenge itself pre-COVID. And then with the uncertain climate of the economy was just even bigger challenge too.
Remote work, it used to be a taboo pre-COVID. You used to talk to established entities, banking sector, insurance sector, established companies that have been around for hundreds of years or 50 years plus, and they used to be like, you used to talk to them, hire remote teams, and they used to like, no, everything needs to be in office. And now because of COVID, everyone has been forced to go remote, right? So going forward, since you're from the recruitment industry, going forward, do you think remote work is here to stay, especially in these traditional companies, or it's just going to stick with technology companies?
I think there will at least be more flexibility about it, because a lot of teams that we've worked with so far that are like 100% relocated, for example, that really needed people to be in the office to feel the culture, um, are now open to more remote teams, right? And so I would actually think remote working was here to stay. I think when we go to the new norm, we might be having some splits into being in office or being out of office, because I think it's just harder to manage when you have everyone out of office. Um, and so I think people are now just figuring out their systems into what actually works and what won't work. But I think given the time that we have to think about it, we'll be able to at least come up with a really good system when we come out of the shelter in place. So
Got
I
it.
think it is safe.
It is here to stay. So mental health, so initially when the COVID started, in the first 1 month or 1.5 month, everyone was like, the productivity has gone up and everything, right? Now, 4 months into it, we're starting to hearing studies that, especially on the East Coast where people don't have, in New York, people don't have big apartments and everything, so they're facing challenges and everything. So what tips and suggestions would you advise to individuals how to cope up with mental health and how to manage their remote teams in a better and efficient way?
What tips do I have for people to manage their teams in a different way if they're stuck in like
In a
a
better
box?
and efficient way, how to better manage remote teams? What would you advise them, especially looking after their mental health?
I think the breaks that you give, you have to definitely have some grace in this period. I feel like there's always this balance between having grace with standards or having standards with grace. And you can always definitely push for productivity, especially, but in this environment, you also have to understand that people need a break. And there's a lot of like studies about the context of where you work in is going to basically also um, affect your productivity, and you need that change in environment no matter what, because you're not made to be in one place for like eternity. And so I think even if you don't need a break, when you're manager, if you're a manager managing a team, give them certain breaks, make things fun, like implement some kind of um, element of fun for everyone to kind of take a break and enjoy things. um, because I think it's you're gonna have to be so self-disciplined when you're locked in a box too. um, and so just, yeah, actually encouraging the breaks would be really good to just break away from the norm. Otherwise you kind of just drive yourself into this tunnel.
So true, so true. Hilary, thank you so much for being on the show. I'm sure we could have talked for at least another 20 minutes, but my marketing team tells me I need to keep it within 12 to 13 minutes and we're on the clock. But thank you so much for being on the show, and take care of yourself and stay safe, and good luck with everything.
Same, thank you.